is Greg, and I am a first grade teacher in Buffalo. I'm from Ithaca, New York, and so I moved to Buffalo for undergrad here at Buff State, and I stayed in the area. As you may know, teachers are required to have a master's degree in New York State. So I sort of came back with my tail between my legs, not wanting a master's program, but knowing I needed one to do what I like to do. So I came to Buff State, and I wanted to enroll myself into educational technology. And I thought that sounded like a really great program that I would be able to kind of use my inherent feelings of creativity within, and sort of have some wiggle room and a spectrum of where I could get creative with projects and assignments. And when I went to sign up, the woman said, that sounds great, but the program is gone. And she asked me if I had heard of the Creative Studies program, which I had not actually. And she described it to me. She gave me a little description paper, and I was just like, well, this is what I wanted. This is what I was hoping to turn ed tech into. So I met with Dr. Puccio for a quick interview, and within 15 minutes, I was just like, yeah, I found the program I was supposed to sign up for.
So I'm John, and I am an art teacher for kindergarten through 8th grade. When I was looking for a master's program, what I thought was really interesting is that I was walking around all these different booths at open house for the graduate schools, and Dr. Puccio was the only person who approached me while I was walking around. And he was so excited about what he had to talk about in his creativity field. He was very enthusiastic. He was very, very articulate. And he's like, you can use what you learned tonight, tomorrow morning at your job. And I said, hey, it also didn't hurt that I had friends and who are teachers as well that had gone through the program that spoke very highly of it. And I said, you know what? I think that's where I need to be, because it's a practical degree that I'll actually be able to use. It was strange. For me, I went into grad school right at the middle of the first few months of the pandemic. So it was one of those things where I need to do this, and this was a really good time because life was kind of on a standstill, so it was a gift to have the time to do it. But I really had I don't think I was nervous. Were you nervous about it when you started, or?
I was curious about it. I feel like, all right, so undergrad was a little underwhelming for me. And everything I wanted out of the college experience, I found in grad school more than I did in undergrad. I wanted debate. I wanted conversation. I wanted people who would openly challenge ideas and engage in back and forths and sort of like a cinematic version of college that growing up you were like, that's what college is like. And undergrad was not a very safe environment for that kind of conversation, and nor was it inducive to people challenging. It was more like, get this done, get that done, get this done, graduate. So I was curious and hopeful that I would find a little bit more of that experience, which is exactly what I did find. But I wasn't nervous. I felt like, well, I'm already teaching. I work 60 plus hours a week, so this will be a struggle to find time to do it well. Well, it was manageable. It's not easy, but nothing, it's not easy being a teacher and doing anything. And that's my opinion. And it's not easy to have a job that requires a lot of you and to have more to give. But what I did think I found was really flexible teachers, people who found ways to make assignments more creative and engaging, and it wasn't just paper, research paper, review paper. There was some of that involved. There was also videos we could make to show our learning, and we could so there were a lot of ways, again, different from undergraduate program, that I felt my time was more effective, and I felt like my learning was had a greater impact on me. So once you start feeling oh, this is great, and I can use this tomorrow in my classroom, I can use this immediately in how I hear a problem, clarify a problem. Like it stops like feeling like a time suck, and it starts feeling like a valued time that you're spending on yourself. And so like the mentality around your time changes. So you're not like, oh, gotta give grad school 5 hours tonight. It's like, cool, like I wonder what I'm gonna get out of this at the end of it. And so that the perception of time kind of changed for me.
I started in a summer semester, so, it was a really condensed, like you have 5 weeks for a course, but I loved that because I was like, it was all encompassing, and I was really able to really understand where we were coming from. And when you start with like the first assignments you do, I was like, you know what, this is cool because they ask about your interests and how do you put your interests into your learning. And one of the really cool things about this department is that it practices what it preaches, right? So you're not just writing a paper on something, you're writing a paper on something that you're interested in. So it's not really a time suck. It's more of like I'm engaged in this because I enjoy it and I want to learn more about it. I really had no assumptions about graduate school. I found that, like Greg said earlier, this was the type of learning that I had always wanted, where it was something that you could use. It wasn't being forced down your throat, but it was also because you were interested in it, and I was interested in what we were talking about, that I actually was more engaged, and I really wanted to go to class. And I don't ever remember saying, and you may feel the same way, that, oh my gosh, I gotta go to class tonight. I don't want to go to class tonight. That never came out of my mouth. So it's been a great journey because I've enjoyed every step of the way. It hasn't been like this is a waste of my life.
And there's always gonna be a struggle. You know what I mean? Like if you're looking for like sunshine and rainbows and every step of the way, that you're setting yourself up for disappointment. Like it's grad school, so there's a grind involved. There is a high level of there's a high expectation, a high bar that you have to meet. And so ultimately, I mean, maybe it's you get over it and you look back at it and you go like, yeah, I did it. I'm proud of myself. It was all worth it. There's definitely fuzzy moments that I think are natural in any intellectual pursuit that are just like this is work. But yeah, you're trying to get a stronger body, you got to put in some work, right? Like it's just what it is. And so having a healthy expectation going in and knowing that it pays off in the end is a really big part of it. Mm-hmm. And then for me, I started around the same time as you, and so it was right when the pandemic hit. And man, if an unbelievable timing event to be studying creativity, just to watch the world bend, and businesses trying to survive with creativity, and adapting schools to virtually, it was just unbelievable. So that carried a lot of energy for me, and just wow, I am studying the answer. or to a lot of problems or how to find them. So that was a really powerful experience as well. So an educational experience in grad school, because you have to remember I have so many now in my work. So educational experience in grad school that made me feel well, this is a big moment. Yeah, for sure. Okay, so when you get into grad school, you're learning the basics, and you're in 559, and you're learning the foundations of creativity, and it's really interesting. And you're like, oh wow, I never thought about creativity this way. I guess I've always had sort of the antiquated perception of creativity, and you start to have this growth mindset. But it was when I got into Roger Firestein's facilitation of group problem solving. Man, that set something loose in me. I've always liked working in groups, collaboratively. I played music. I like playing with music with other people as opposed to just by myself in a room. And that was still virtual because of the pandemic. and to see how they just doing a group problem solving was so energizing, and I felt like I actually created like a bond with everybody in that class, and I haven't seen a lot of them since, but I still like keep in touch with them because there was something about going through that together and sharing that experience together that was like definitely unifying. And I immediately was just like, oh, I'm going to bring this back to my school. Like, I'm going to be like the group problem solver guy. I'm going to be like the CPS dude who is like, we have a problem, let's CPS it. I was just like definitely like kind of like a naive like first learner of CPS, but honestly, it really set something loose in me, and I started to like change my perception towards what the program was even about, from learning the basics to like being really in it. That was cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I think for me too, it was something similar early in the program. I wouldn't say it's probably around 610, which is like the group facilitating problem solving, and 670. One of the things is we talked about all the problem solving tools. And one of the tools was what's stopping you. Mm-hmm. And I remember having to do an exercise where we wrote down a challenge that we had, and we had to go down and really figure out what was stopping you. And one of the things I had always wanted to do was to be a children's book author and illustrator. And I was like, why is this so hard? Why is this not working? What is the? And then you find out that you're the problem because you're stopping yourself. So because of that tool, I was actually able to complete an entire children's book that semester, and then the second semester do the second one. So it was like really cool because you were able to see a tool that we use for like companies to like solve big issues, and we're these government agencies that use to solve these big issues, and then little old me, it's just like, oh yeah, you're in your own way, move over. So that was beneficial. It's life-changing because these are practical skill sets that we as human beings need to survive in a 21st century world. And as teachers, we talk about this all the time, that we don't know what our students are going to be doing when they graduate. I don't know what job they're going to have. I don't even know if anyone will be working by the time that they graduate, to be honest. But the creativity aspect is what really sets us apart. And just being able to see that and how that can be utilized in my life and how I can share that and model that for my students is very, very, like I said, life-changing. It's something that when I first started, I was like, I don't know if I'm going to buy into this. This might be a little, this is a hard sell. But then you see it working. And I had never seen like a theory that I had learned in undergraduate school actually work the way it was set out to do. We probably have a similar experience where we're taking these classes and it's like, oh, this is the theory and this is how it's supposed to happen. But outside of this book, it doesn't work that way. Right. But in this circumstance, CPS and creativity, it works. Yeah. And it's just amazing that is something that actually has, the value that it sets out to have.
Yeah. I also have this thought that kind of like comes back a lot to me for teachers off of that. Like, it's life-changing, and that's true. Like, the way, what's stopping you, just like going through those practices and those strategies will change the way you think about things, and that is very true. I also kept thinking this should be required for all educators. Mm-hmm. This is like, okay, when you are looking at graduate programs, as an educator, you're going to be encouraged to look at special education and literacy. And those are, and for a reason, like schools are like oftentimes looking for that. Schools are wrong. I can say that with a lot of confidence, especially like a shout out Buff State. My undergrad program was incredibly thorough. I oftentimes don't need to go to a literacy specialist. I don't need to go to a special ed specialist because I was equipped with all the knowledge I needed to be able to do tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 and referrals and the process. And so when I'm thinking about myself as like a well-rounded educator, and I'm thinking about my students and what they need for their future, I think they need more teachers who firmly understand the characteristics of creativity, that firmly understand the importance of creativity, not only baked into the curriculum for science and literacy and math and everything, but like curriculum based around creating and nurturing and fostering creativity in students. So I think if you're like somebody who goes into education, you have a good heart, you mean well, you're there because you believe in education, you believe in the impact a teacher in the school can have on a community of students, then you should be looking at creative studies. Plain and simple. Because if you really want to unleash a child's potential, I feel like this is ground level from pre-K on. The students need to be given an environment by a teacher who understands how to foster their creativity.
One of the things that I've done is the first step of CPS when you're ideating, right, is deferred judgment. And I wrote that on my whiteboard above my classroom. And whenever a student looks at their artwork and they're saying, oh, it doesn't look good, or I wish it was better, I point them up to deferred judgment. Another interesting thing with that, though, is that not only am I having my students do it, but I'm practicing it too. And it's so hard because we as a society are very judgmental. We as human beings are very judgmental. But I find that I'm just happier and that my students are happier in that environment when they're just like, I'm not going to worry about what other people think. I'm not going to worry about what I think right now. I want to just let it go and see what happens. That has been probably one of the largest takeaways, just letting students trust themselves and their creativity and just not being afraid of what other people think.
Yeah, it's funny. In my classroom, I've adopted we are problem solvers. So I have a banner that says "Welcome Problem Solvers" in my classroom, and we in our daily affirmations we make in my classroom. It ends with, and we can solve our problems, and the kids always chant it. Even as a roundup, like when I have students in an activity, and they're struggling, I can say we are, and they will finish problem solvers. So I teach first grade, so they're really young. So the type of stuff we do is foundational, right? And we focus on, as far as creativity goes, creativity characteristics and things like that. So it's also just changed the way the language I use, and the encouragement that I'm like, wow, this is great problem solving. Look at you getting, you thought about this problem. Some people might have done this, you did that, they both would have worked. So we just start talking about the options and start planting seeds in them. But yeah, today it's so bizarre that this happened this afternoon. I explained to them that the problems they'll be solving one day don't exist yet. And it's super heady for a 6 and 7-year-old kid to hear. And I don't think I normally would have done that before. But I just threw it out there, and it was received. They got it. And I was just like, wow, I have been selling them short for years. I haven't been trusting them to be able to handle bigger concepts of creativity. That the problems they're going to solve one day, the jobs that they're going to work one day, might not even exist yet, because things will change between now and when they're doing them. And they totally got it. And, in their own 6 and 7-year-old ways, they started, well, I'm going to go to space, because that's what they think of future, right? And I'm going to be a TikToker. The normal conversations happen still, but they fundamentally got this big concept that they have to be creative, they have to solve problems, and we don't even know what all the problems are going to be one day. And I don't know, it seemed like they were pretty excited about that, so it was cool. It's natural, I think, to hear about creativity and creative problem solving and think that it's idealistic, because there is some heavy restrictions against teachers. The education system, which is something, by the way, I think I started to kind of become complicit with, in certain ways until the program started. That's something crossed my mind, was like, this kind of snapped me back out of like the sort of, sheep-like tendencies that teachers have. Well, this is the way we do it. And I started going, well, why? Why are we doing it this way? Is there a better way? What is there? So I think it's easy to look at creative studies and creativity as a subject of study and to think it's idealistic, but I think it's important that teachers understand the power that they have themselves, and a decision to become more creative and understanding, like holistically understanding what creativity can do to their classroom, is not just empowering the students but themselves as well. And there will be sort of like a struggle, but it's a struggle that we're lucky to have as teachers, to be advocating for what's best for our classroom and what's best for our students. It's a struggle that if we don't take that struggle up, like, who does? And that's a scary thought. So it's not necessarily like this thing. It's like, yeah, I studied creativity and I use it immediately and it's easy because I'm still held to meeting my standards. And guess what? Creativity is not part of it. But my understanding of creativity is important to my students. It also improves my teaching, so therefore I hit my standards better. My students' growth is off the charts, you name it. But I think it's just important to understand the challenge that exists ahead of us and the opportunity for us to meet that challenge.
This program is definitely worth the investment because the value is so immense. You as an educator, you just go into work every day and you say, you know what, I want to make a difference in somebody's life. And sometimes the teachers that teach whatever it may be, that subject is not what made a difference in the child's life, but what they bring up. And I like to think of myself as not just an art educator, but also somebody who embraces creativity and promotes it and models it. And if you're going to practice what you preach, you have to do it in every aspect of your life. And I found that the value of this program, not only is it life-changing, but it's also something that I would definitely recommend to anybody, not just an educator, but anybody who needs a master's degree and is on this journey of self-growth, because it's definitely something that you're going to want to have in your arsenal when you go out into the real world.